You're listening to the Visible Expert Podcast, where we share stories, research, and actionable insights to help B2B marketers and practitioners drive extraordinary growth in their professional lives. Hello, everybody. Thanks for listening to the Visible Expert Podcast. I'm John Tyerman.
And as always, I'm Kelly Waffle.
And we've got a great show for you today. Today on the show, we've got Ahmad Munawar of Boutique Growth, the creator of the 90-Day Pipeline, fellow podcaster and friend of Hinge. This podcast is brought to you by the Hinge Research Institute. We're doing some really great things over there. We've got a lot of different research that's coming out that we're going to be publishing over the next year or so, and there's different ways that if you want to get involved with the Hinge Research Institute, we can create custom research for you to use in your content marketing. And Kelly, you want to talk a little bit about some of the other things that we're doing?
Yeah, it's kind of exciting. So as more and more organizations are finding out, research is the key to freedom to allow people to grow their business. They can go back and justify a lot of what they're doing by saying that it's grounded in good research. So some of the options that we have available for our listeners are the ability to license some of our existing research. So you may just want to be able to go out there and take advantage of that research and access it and apply it to some sales collateral you're doing or some other thought leadership program you have in place. You always have the ability to run a customized program with us where we'll go very in-depth on a given topic and really provide some insights that'll really help your organization directly, not just at the industry or market level. And then finally, we do offer different levels of sponsorship. So we have different pieces of research coming up throughout the year, and we are always looking for sponsors to help us turn that research into reality.
Yeah, and some of the examples of the research that we have are we do an annual high growth study where we look at the fastest growing professional services firms and what they do differently than the slower growing firms in the marketplace. We also have an employer brand survey. So your brand is not just what your clients perceive you to be, but it's also what your prospective employees and perceive your company to be and what it would be like, what is their employee experience. So those are just two examples of some of the different research that we've got coming out there. So, all right, let's get into the show. So just make sure that if you like this show, if you like hearing us talk with different subject matter experts, please rate, review, and subscribe to the show. It really helps us with getting new people involved and getting new listeners and spreading the word of our experts. So I thought Ahmad's interview was really interesting. He's creator of the 90-Day Pipeline, which is really focused on accelerating lead generation. He's a LinkedIn mastermind. If you don't follow him on LinkedIn, you should. He gave us his 5 Ps of marketing, which is a different take on sort of how marketing is evolved, and he really gave some actionable tips to an aspiring visible expert on building up their expertise. Kelly, what did you think?
Yeah, to me, these podcasts are all around storytelling, and I really enjoyed his story. It comes across as very original, very authentic, very trustworthy, very unique, and he does a nice job of sharing some actionable tips near the end of the interview that people can use to really progress on their journey to become a visible expert. So as you listen to this, you may want to have a piece of paper and a pen available, or have your laptop there so you can take notes along the way.
But not if you're driving, though. Make sure.
Please pull off to the side of the road. It's well worth a 30-minute delay.
It is, or bookmark the episode so you come back to it once you get to the office or get home. So, all right. Well, on that note, with no further ado, let's go straight to the interview. Here comes Ahmad. All right, and we are joined with Ahmad Munawar. Ahmed, how are you doing today?
Doing great, John, Kelly. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm a big fan of yours. I listen to your Marketing Out Loud daily podcast and your Forecast podcast, and it's always good following you on LinkedIn. So it's a pleasure to have you on our show.
Well, I think I'm about as close as it gets to being a Hinge fanboy, and we may get into this a little bit later. But I discovered Hinge very early on in my consulting journey, and been a huge fan since then. I don't know, that's probably like 10 years ago now when I first discovered Hinge. Been a huge fan, so it's a real honor to be on the show and to be here with both of you.
Great. Yeah, it's been about 10 years that we've been doing a bunch of research and stuff. So you joined in right as we were starting out. So that's really great. Before we dive into your story, can you tell us a little bit about Boutique Growth and your 90-day pipeline program?
Yeah, so Boutique Growth is a marketing and business development advisory practice that's focused on helping boutique professional service firms stand out in the marketplace, develop a name and reputation for themselves, and win more deals at higher fees. Our flagship program that we offer to clients is called the 90-day pipeline. When I first conceived of this program, I thought to myself, what if we could take a professional service practice and dial in their marketing and their lead generation systems in 90 days flat, start to finish, 90 days, not 6 months, not 12 months, but 90 days. What would that look like? And a few years later, and a lot of back of the napkin sketches, the 90-day pipeline was born. So now we've really distilled the entire marketing process, everything from choosing a target market to developing positioning, differentiation, crafting a message, thought leadership content, outreach campaigns, all the stuff that you need to generate leads and win deals, down to a step-by-step process that you can complete in 90 days.
Very cool. It sounds like it's a pretty aggressive program. You said that you've got a bunch of outreach stuff. So can you give us an example of something that what's a typical day like in the 90-day program?
Yeah, so it's designed to be very intensive, right? So the idea is you come in, you work with me and my team for 90 days, and you get more done in 90 days than you otherwise would on your own, and probably in years on your own. So one of my clients, for example, her name's Myrna. She's a leadership development coach and consultant out of South Africa, Cape Town, Johannesburg, rather. And I asked her, in a testimonial interview, I asked her, how long would it have taken you to do all this on your own? The positioning and differentiation and the messaging and the lead generation campaigns and all, like, how long would it take you? And she said, honestly, 10 to 15 years if I had actually been able to do it on my own. So what we've done here is we've created an environment where a consultant, a service provider can come in and they have everything they need. They have all the support, the tools and the resources, and they're in this kind of like, in a positive way, a pressure cooker kind of environment, right? Because you got 90 days, right? Don't blow it, right? They're spending a lot of money to be here, right? So there's this pressure to perform and to build all this stuff out that makes for a pretty incredible experience.
Very cool.
Nice. Ahmed, here at Hinge, we really define recognized influencers in the B2B space as visible experts. And part of the reason we're doing this podcast is really to capture the stories of some of these visible experts. Each one is different. Each one I find is very interesting, but I really am wrapped up in the storytelling and the ups and downs that occurred along the journey. Can you spend a few minutes talking about your personal journey becoming a visible expert?
Yeah, I really built my practice on the back of thought leadership content and publishing. Like that's why I have what I have today. That's why we have the clients that we have and the success that we've had is publishing, really simply. I started my practice about probably going on 6 years ago. And from day one, it was publishing. I was an early adopter of what we call content marketing. And I had used content marketing and publishing as tactics in my previous experiences in the consulting world. And when I started Boutique Growth, that was where we started. So in those days, it was email newsletters, right? Lots changed since then. Still have an email newsletter, but in those days, my main content channel was an email newsletter, and I was publishing a weekly email newsletter. Built a steady list, guest posted for the Hinge blog, guest posted for Duct Tape Marketing and some other big publications. And that's how I kind of got started. That was the extent of my personal brand back then, was a weekly email newsletter. And slowly that started to grow. And then that evolved into podcasting. right? And then I started podcasting, started my interview show, Forecast, which John and Leah have both been on. And then that grew, and I started interviewing experts in the field and thought leaders in marketing and business development, and really distilling the best practices in marketing and business development for a professional services audience, which at the time, I mean, Forecast has been around for, I want to say, probably 3 years now. There wasn't a lot out there for professional services folks in the podcast world, right? You guys are doing great work with your blog and your articles and resources, not a lot of podcasting. Now we got a lot to choose from, thanks to you, right? Which is fantastic. So then it became podcasting, right? And then that evolved into video and LinkedIn. And now LinkedIn has really gone through a major resurgence in the last year, 2 years with LinkedIn video.
Right.
And then advertising. So now, it feels overwhelming at times, but my personal brand has so many touch points that the response I get from people is everywhere I look, I see you. I'm on Facebook, doing my thing, and I see an ad. I go on LinkedIn, I see your videos. Go to my podcast feed, I see your podcast. Open my inbox, I see your email. And it's like you're omnipresent. And that's really been a powerful driving force in my business. I'm only one person in the end sharing all these insights, but we really cracked the code on distributing these insights and this content to a number of different channels and platforms. And that's had a tremendous effect on the business.
Yeah, that's something that I don't know if you listen to Eric Sue and Neil Patel's Marketing School podcast, but they're always talking about being an omni-channel, the omni-channel approach, being everywhere. Can you tell us a little bit more about, I know that you're very active on LinkedIn. Would you say that that's your number one channel?
Yeah, at this stage, absolutely. And I think for the vast majority of consultants and professional service providers, it absolutely should be your number one channel because that's where the buyers are.
Right.
So in our program, for example, the 90-day pipeline, we focus almost exclusively on LinkedIn. Like if you're a client coming into the 90-day pipeline, you'd have to have a really good reason to talk me out of not starting with LinkedIn, right? Because I don't know of a faster way for us to build a list, a targeted list of people that you want to work with, right? Literally within a few clicks of a mouse and strokes of a keyboard, we can build you a list of hundreds and thousands of prospects that you ought to be connecting with. I don't know of a faster way to connect with them either than the way you can on LinkedIn. And I don't know of a faster way to get a message in front of them, either in the feed through your content or through direct messaging. So yeah, LinkedIn is massive for me and all of my clients. I would imagine it's a very important channel for all of your clients and listeners as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's definitely a top channel for us. I was looking at your LinkedIn profile, and it's well put together. I noticed that you started out as a senior accountant at Ernst & Young. Can you tell us a little bit about that experience and then what you wish you had known when you first started out? Or is there any one thing that you could tell your earlier self that you know today?
Well, so I graduated business school, and I, obviously as a 22 some odd year old man, I had no idea what I wanted to do in life. So I said, well, let me just get the highest paying job I possibly can. And, that would typically be investment banking, but nobody hired investment bankers out of my school. So that wasn't an option. So, okay, well, I'll just join a CPA firm, or we call them chartered accountants here in Canada, or at least we used to. And got a job at a couple offers, E&Y, KPMG, got a job at E&Y. I was like, okay, well, this is great. Wear some nice suits, fancy lunches, big firm, right? Blue chip clients. I audited a couple of the big banks here in Canada. Great, right? It took about 6 months for the glamour of that to wear off. And I realized, no disrespect to the accountants out there, because I've got plenty of accounting clients, it wasn't really for me. And I didn't feel like I was utilizing my core strengths as an accountant and as an auditor. So after I got my letters, I knew I had an entrepreneurial itch. I didn't really know what that looked like or what my path would be to becoming an entrepreneur, starting my own practice. So what I did was I joined a small little boutique consulting firm. I had a couple of friends who had started a consulting practice. They had one big whale client. That's all they had. And they knew nothing about business. They were subject matter experts, specialists. We were in the education space. They developed curriculum and teacher training programs. And so they were like, hey, you know what? You're a business guy, right? You work at a big firm, you get some nice suits, right? You're well-spoken. Why don't you come work with us? I was like, okay, sure. Even though I know jack all about running a business, growing a business, marketing. I'm an accountant, I'm an auditor, but for them, I was the closest thing that they knew to a business guy. So I jumped in, and that's really where I cut my teeth in, business. And I did everything: marketing, strategy, business development, accounting, finance, operations, project management. We were like a team of, in the beginning, 4 or 5 people. And then we grew pretty quickly to a 7-figure firm, closed some pretty big deals with Pearson Education, University of Toronto, some big government agencies in the Gulf, big 6 and 7-figure deals. And that experience is really where I cut my teeth in marketing, business development, strategy in that boutique consulting professional services environment. And on the back of that, I figured, hey, well, there's probably more folks who need this kind of stuff. And then I started Boutique Growth.
Interesting. You talk about a bunch of different experiences and cutting your teeth in a variety of different areas. As you look back, what's the biggest challenge you faced so far, or what's the lesson you've learned that you'd like to share with our audience about your journey?
So I think a big challenge has always been, and I find this in a lot of my clients, authenticity. And it's something that I think is unique in many ways to the professional services world and the consulting world, is that we kind of have this attitude where we feel like we need to put on a bit of a front. We need to look very buttoned up. We need to look very professional, right? We can't go on camera without the suit and tie, right? And, we can only say things a certain way, and we shouldn't let too much personality come out in our content or our marketing and our messaging. And I certainly experienced that and got that pushback, back when I was, director of marketing in a consulting firm. And I even experienced that in myself, in the earlier days of publishing, especially when you get into things like video, right? Because video is, if you haven't done it, it's a bit of a ride, right? Getting used to being on camera and getting comfortable, it's a journey, it's an experience. And just as a small example, for me, when I first got on video, I would go into like this kind of like infomercial kind of mode where it would feel like I was selling a sponge mop, right? And my voice would get all pitchy and like high. And it just literally felt like I was selling you like a sponge mop or a chopper, like what, I don't even watch infomercials, whatever they're selling these days, right? And it wasn't me. Like that's not how I talk. It's not how I articulate myself. It's not my authentic self. And it took a process of just getting comfortable in my own skin and really looking inward to define where I can show and demonstrate leadership in the market. And that's really, I think, the big thing, right? Is a lot of people feel like I don't have anything to offer. I don't have anything to say. The Hinge guys tell me I should be a visible expert. I don't know if I have what it takes. I'm just an accountant. I'm just a lawyer. I'm just a consultant. I'm just a this or that, right? I'm not some kind of like big name, right? And I think that attitude certainly held me back for a long time, and held a lot of my clients back for a long time. I think it holds a lot of your listeners back because they're discounting what they potentially have to offer to the market because of imposter syndrome, because of a fear of failure, because of self-doubt, because of any number of issues. But the truth is, if you dig deep, and I found this to be true, my clients have found this to be true, if you dig deep, there is always an opportunity for you to show leadership in your market, but it requires some introspection and requires you, really digging deep and asking yourself, what can I bring to the market that nobody else can? And it was only when I really asked myself that question and reflected deeply on that question, what can I bring to the market that nobody else can, that I began to get more comfortable in my own skin and my more authentic self came out. And I would say that's when things really took off.
Yeah, go ahead. That's a great point there, Ahmed. I was just taking some notes here, but, we at Hinge spend a lot of time working with our clients on differentiators. And, what you just hit on, I think, is very important around not only authenticity, but integrity and trust. People can see that, people can feel that, and you can't make that stuff up. And if you can deliver on those points, I think you're going to build a great relationship with your clients and business partners and everyone else in your community.
Well, here's the big opportunity on that note. I tell all my clients that when you see me on a video on LinkedIn, or you read an email from me, or listen to a podcast from me, I want it to feel exactly like it feels when we're having a direct conversation.
Right.
Like no different, right? Like that's me on LinkedIn, on email, on a podcast. That's me in a direct conversation with you, the client, right? And when you can really master that and nail that down, then what happens is you're able to nurture relationships at scale. Yeah. Because a lot of people are really, really good at nurturing relationships one-on-one. When they get in the door with a client or a prospect, they're really good at building that relationship. Well, what if you could do that at scale, right? What if you could create content that promotes that personal brand, promotes those values, showcases your most authentic self, demonstrates leadership in the market, but do it for hundreds and thousands of people? That's the big opportunity for most of us.
Well, I thought that's really interesting because, as I was driving in this morning, I was listening to a bunch of your Marketing Out Loud episodes just to, get accustomed to your voice and to prepare for this interview. Excuse me. And I found myself almost kind of responding to some of the questions you were asking as I was driving, just because I felt like I was talking to you on the phone like we are now. Can you tell me a little bit about the podcasts in particular? I watched your workshop, and that was really helpful. Can you tell us a little bit about how that channel in particular has affected you?
Yeah, in many ways. So I've got two shows, like you mentioned. So Forecast is my interview show, and then Marketing Out Loud is my monologue. So both podcasts have been tremendous and have had a major impact on my business. On the Forecast side, like you guys are doing, right, going out and interviewing thought leaders and experts in the market, in my case, marketing, business development, has been huge, right? Because what happens when you find somebody who seems to have all these connections in the marketplace? They know this big name and that big name, right? I've had Lee Fredrickson on my show, John Tyreman on my show. I've had John Jantz of Duct Tape Marketing, Ian Brody, a mutual friend of ours, right? A lot of big names in this space have been on my show. So somebody comes and they finds me, they see all these people have been on my podcast. What does that do? Instant credibility. Okay, well, he must play in their circles. And frankly, in the early days, I didn't play in their circles, right? Like when John Jantz came to me, this is the best story, right? The Forecast was going well. It wasn't like I wasn't knocking it out of the park. It was still pretty early days, but it was a good show, right? And I get an email from John Jantz of Duct Tape Marketing. Like I read his book when I was in college, and I get an email from John Jantz saying, "Hey, would love to come on your show." And I was tempted to reply, "Is this some kind of sick joke, John? Because it's not funny," right? And so John comes on my show, and then all these other big names come on my show, and all of a sudden, I'm this leader, I'm this influencer, I'm this person in the market of interest, and clients paid attention, right? And then with an interview show, what happens is, as I'm sure you're experiencing, the guests share the podcast, right? Because they've been on the show. The only reason they want to go on the show, apart from having a good conversation, is for the reach and the exposure. So they're going to share it with their audiences, like I'm going to share this one with my audience. And then the show grows, and then my network grows. So the interview show has been fantastic from that perspective, from a branding, positioning, thought leadership, and relationship perspective. The daily monologue is really interesting because what I found after a while of publishing the interview show is I wasn't doing enough of my own thought leadership and sharing my own opinions and perspectives on the market and on the challenges that clients and prospects are experiencing. And that's really where Marketing Out Loud was born. I wanted a channel through which I could share my perspective. The focus of Forecast is on the guest. And I probably still talk too much, right? It wouldn't surprise you on that show, but the focus is primarily on the guest, right? And I wanted a channel through which I could share, what are my ideas? How do I feel? What do I think, right? And that's where Marketing Out Loud was born. And really, that's had a tremendous impact because the people that listen to Marketing Out Loud, and I think John's comments earlier reflect this, they have a very close relationship with the show because it's daily and it's 5 minutes a day. So I'm in your ears probably every day on your commute. And just imagine, right, what that's like, where you're learning from somebody every single day, drip by drip by drip, right? I think of it as, not to draw any comparisons, of course, because there's no comparison. I think of it as the audio equivalent of Seth Godin's daily blog, right? Okay. I mean, right. Seth Godin, for me, as for many others, like just that daily blog, right? It doesn't take more than 30 seconds or 60 seconds to read, has had a tremendous impact on my thinking and my career. And I'm trying to achieve something very similar with Marketing Out Loud in my audience.
Very cool. Yeah, and one of the episodes that you had that I listened to on the way in, there's only two opinions that you should care about: your markets and your accountants. I thought that was really really insightful. Yeah. So thinking about your journey, obviously you've been at this for quite some time. At what point did you realize that you turned a corner and really reached a new level of visible expertise?
Yeah. So actually, I have a really specific point in time that I remember. This is back when I was publishing an email newsletter. I was doing some guest blogging. I was doing a number of things, but I hadn't really put out any kind of a framework or any kind of an approach or a system that I had developed. If anybody asked, what is Ahmed's approach? They wouldn't be able to figure it out. What is Boutique Growth's approach? You wouldn't know, right? I would consider myself at that stage more of a marketing commentator. I would share ideas and commentary, but I wasn't really putting forward any real original thought leadership. And so what I decided to do, because I wanted to give people kind of like a middle of funnel piece of content, to use marketing parlance, right? People are discovering me, but something middle of the funnel that qualifies them and nurtures them to want to become a client. So I created this free course. It was a video course, and I called it the 5 Ps of lead generation for professional service firms. Okay. And what I did was, it was original, but not terribly original. Okay. The 5 Ps of lead generation are things that anybody that has any experience in copywriting, direct response especially, would be familiar with. It's profile, problem, promise, proof, push. Okay. If your lead generation isn't working, if you're not generating leads, chances are you're falling down in one or more of these areas. You don't have a clear profile that you're targeting. The problem isn't specific enough. You're not making a promise. You're not sharing proof. You're not pushing for the conversation. Somewhere along those lines, you're falling down. So I packaged this video course, and it was 5 videos, each of them about 5-6 minutes each. There was worksheets, and I put it out in the market. And to my surprise, it blew up. I mean, the response was immediate. And what people found was that this was the first time they'd seen a really concise approach to lead generation that gave them clarity on why they weren't generating leads and gave them a plan of action and a framework through which to proceed with their campaigns. And that's really where things kind of turned around for me. And I realized, if I actually take the time and develop some original thinking, and again, I put original in air quotes, right? Because the raw ideas are not original. Nothing's original. Like, we're all borrowing from it from somewhere else, right? But the originality comes in the packaging, right? So the way that I articulated those 5 Ps and shared them with my market, with the professional services audience, that was original. That was unique. I was speaking their language, using examples that are relevant and of interest to them. So what I realized at that stage was, you know what? If I actually step back and think deeply about my market, think deeply about their concerns, and come up with some original ideas that I believe would be valuable to them, that's a really incredible exercise. It's a really valuable exercise, right? And case in point, I mean, I think I published the course 3 years ago. It's still a mainstay in my marketing. It's the gift that keeps on giving, right? And then from there, it's, webinars and, lead magnets and all these original pieces of content that are just assets, right? They're assets. And the thing that I learned, and I try to impress on my clients, is the more of these you can create, and not like, Me Too stuff, right? Not like, I'm going to put a lead magnet together, a webinar together because somebody else did it. I'm going to rip them off and just kind of change the wording. Not that, but real original thinking, right? The kind of stuff that your market, when they find it, will say, I don't know where else I can get this, right? This is unique. And that comes back to that conversation earlier about discovering what you can uniquely contribute to the market, where you can demonstrate leadership, where no one else can. Right. And when you can create content and package up ideas that speak to that unique positioning that you have in the marketplace, that becomes a really powerful thing. So that was the moment where I realized, hey, you know what? I actually have something to say and it's really valuable and people like it. Maybe I should do more of it. And I haven't stopped since.
That's really great. And I love those 5 Ps. I've been hearing and seeing a lot out there that, the 4 Ps of marketing are dead: price, product, promotion, and place. So it's I think that's a great kind of iteration of that and sort of evolution of that.
Ahmed, I liked what you were saying about the unique and original thinking. A lot of the folks that listen to our podcasts are starting out as subject matter experts. So they may be known within their given company, but they really haven't necessarily done a lot with blogging. Maybe they haven't done a lot of speaking events. They really haven't pushed out any thought leadership. Do you have any kind of actionable tips you could provide to help them along their journey so that they could move down the path to become more of a visible expert?
Yeah, tons. So let's start here. It's a common question I get from clients and prospects. So don't worry too much about being original. Like that's not the immediate objective, right? What you want to worry about is three things. One is, who am I talking to? Who's my prospect? And the deeper that you can get into the psyche of your prospect, the better. And this is where most folks, and you guys know this just as well as I do. This is where most people fail, right? They don't fail because they're not smart, or they don't know what to say, or they don't have smart ideas, is they don't understand their market well enough. They got blinders on. They don't really deeply, intimately understand what their market, what their clients and their prospects are thinking, what they're concerned about. So to me, the first thing is it begins with a really deep, intimate understanding of the psyche of your customer and your client. What are their frustrations? What are their challenges? What do they want? They don't want to make more money. Okay, nobody wants to make more money. They want something else. They want higher revenue for some other reason. They don't want to cut costs. Nobody wants to cut costs. They want something else. Okay? They don't want to lower risk. Nobody wakes up and says, I wish we had less risk. Right? They want something else, right? So until you know what they actually want, you're not going to be able to connect with them. That's the first thing. Okay? The second thing is have a really strong consumption routine, right? Ideas are not created in a vacuum. You've got to be consuming, right? Consumption is the fuel for your ideas, right? So you've got to feed your brain, your conscious, your subconscious mind with ideas. So really, really strong consumption routine, garbage in, garbage out, right? So Netflix doesn't count, right? Although I'm sure you'll pick up a few things here and there. That'll be helpful. But a strong consumption routine with high quality content. Listen to the Visible Expert podcast, right? Listen to other thought leaders. Read good books, but cross-pollinate, right? Don't just read stuff in your market. Like if I just read marketing books, I'm going to sound like every other marketer.
Right.
That's not the objective. That's not the goal, right? So I'm reading marketing. I'm reading philosophy. I'm reading social science. I'm reading psychology. I'm reading economics. Like half the time with my clients, I'm talking about supply and demand, right? It's not marketing, but it's meaningful. It's important for them, right? So a really strong consumption routine where you're cross-pollinating ideas from different disciplines, including your own, right? And letting that stew, letting that cook in the subconscious mind, right? And then actively publishing. Okay, you would be amazed, and I'm sure you folks have found this, you would be amazed how good you will get at articulating and crafting ideas and sharpening your ideas just by publishing, right? The act of publishing, they say writing clarifies your thinking, right? And I think that's true for every type of publishing, writing, audio, video, whatever it is, it clarifies your thinking. Your ideas get better. So if I look back on my publishing journey, my ideas in the beginning, admittedly, were weak. They weren't terribly good ideas. I'll admit that. You can go back and look at them. They weren't fantastic, not terribly original. Now it's by orders of magnitude better. Why? I know my market. I consume a lot. I cross-pollinate ideas, and I publish a lot, right? So I tell my clients, you publish every week in 10, 12, 20 weeks, you're going to get better. It's impossible not to. You're going to improve. Your ideas will get sharper.
These are great points. And I love the point about the consumption routine because, and that hit home for me because I've got two boys under 4 years old at home, and I've got another one along the way. And
nice.
So when I get home, I can't read blog posts. I can't read books. And I've got about a 90-minute commute into the office. So that's why, I filtered out Facebook. I'm not even on Facebook anymore just because it was just clogging up my feed. So I started listening to podcasts, and I thought that's the way that I can connect into the market, into other thought leadership, and get new ideas into my head. So I think that's a great point, the consumption routine.
And one other thing to note here, like even if you don't publish that often, a really powerful exercise, just to get really tactical with you, is write every day. Just write something every day. You don't have to publish it, right? A really powerful exercise is what they call free writing. Free writing is a where you sit down and you write stream of consciousness. Whatever comes to mind, you put it on paper, no filter, no editing. I promise you, you do that every day, you're going to come up with some really incredible ideas. Because what happens is ideas get blocked in your subconscious, right? They're there, but they're blocked. There's no outlet for them to come out because whenever you say something or you write an article or you record a video, you're actively editing. That's the natural process, right? The brain is editing you up because you don't want to sound stupid or look stupid, right? So a lot of the gems are blocked in your subconscious, are not coming out. Free writing opens it up. It gives them a channel through which to come out, right? Just by stream of consciousness, putting things onto paper. Some of my best ideas have come out of that free writing exercise. In fact, I think the 5 Ps did, if I'm not mistaken. Don't hold me to that. But.
You never know what hidden gems you're going to find in the stream of consciousness. No, that's really great, tactical, actionable, practical insights. Ahmad, thank you so much. For folks that are listening, if they want to connect with you or find you, how could they find you?
Yeah, probably the best thing is head over to boutiquegrowth.com. You can find all of my content there. There should be links to my social profiles there. LinkedIn is a great place to start. So go and find me on LinkedIn. Happy to connect with anybody who's listening.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show, and we look forward to talking with you again. I'm sure that we'll continue the conversation later.
Hey, my pleasure, guys. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ahmed. All
right, and that was our interview with Ahmad Munawar of Boutique Growth, creator of the 90-Day Pipeline, fellow podcaster, and friend of Hinge. So I thought his interview was great. Those are some really actionable tips that he gave. I'm definitely going to go back and listen to those myself.
Well, you're always learning, John.
It's a process of continuous improvement.
I think we're going to have him on a webinar sometime in the near future. There's just too much information there that one podcast doesn't do it justice.
Yeah, and he mentioned even that process of continuous improvement too, and not just learning about marketing, but philosophy and economics.
I think that whole component about learning, and I really like the idea of writing every day to kind of unlock your mind, even if you don't publish it. Just the concept of writing, I think, just does so much for your mind and takes you in different directions. And I thought that was a fantastic tip.
It's a good way to clarify your thoughts.
Yeah.
All right, so for our listeners out there, as always, we're brought to you by the Hinge Research Institute, and if you're interested in becoming a visible expert, we have the book, The Visible Expert, which is available. Just go to hingemarketing.com, go to our library, and then there's a book section there where you can download the book for free. If you also want to get a little bit more involved and take the next step, we have the Visible Expert course, which is available on Hinge University. You can go to hingeuniversity.com and check out the Visible course there. So, as always, thank you for listening. Again, please rate, review, and subscribe to the show. It really helps us attract new listeners and spread the word of our experts. And we'll talk to you next week. Happy branding.